could like push you away from where you want. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this, the 8th ordinary game of the 169th session of the Queen's University of Belfast to the Literary and Scientific Society. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all here this evening to the Senate room. As you are all well aware, we're here to discuss the motion of this House would stop funding for Mars exploration. This evening is a very special debate for two reasons. Not only is it a joint debate with our friends from the Queen's University of Belfast Physics and Applied Maths Society, can I get a wave from our PAMSOC friends? Hello! Ben. You don't do kind of stuff. But also because we have a very special guest chair in the form of Dr. John Hallsworth down there. But introductions, getting show up comes slightly later. For the moment we have our announcements for this evening, of which I have a couple. I should have had this app ready to go. To start us off, I was originally going to stand here this evening and tell you about the brave feats of our two young members who ventured to the faraway land of PFC to compete in the Irish Times. We're getting to that stranger in the distance. One of which whom was victorious, the other one was unfortunately not. However, due to some shady backroom dealings, both of these people are now progressing to the second round as wild card members. So, can we please have a big round of applause for the second round of the Irish Times competitors from the Literific, Mr. Evan Doherty and Mr. Russell Nairn. A very big congratulations to you both. A job well done indeed.
You're welcome.
Other things to remind you about are simply that, so a good general announcement is that don't let the number of speakers sitting before you this evening fool you. We are always on the lookout for new people and more people to speak at our debates. Fair enough. Walked into that one, admittedly. But yes, if you're sitting in the back rows and you're thinking to yourself, that seems nice, but I don't need a volunteer myself, they've always got plenty of people. By all means, please put your name forward. We generally give preference to those who haven't spoken before. So if any of the motions have caught your eye and you haven't felt like putting yourself forward just yet, please do so. Other than that, we also have, don't forget, our spreadsheet for the internal meeting went up just this week. You can suggest motions for the debates that we may or may not have next semester. You can fill in as many or as few as you like on any topic that you like, and these will be debated at our internal meeting in December, the first week, I believe. So yes, get that filled in because it is your chance to shape the voice of the society for next semester. Mr. MacDonald has order. Huzzah! Yes, Ms. Fleming?
Just spreadsheet.
Yes.
If you add motions to it, right up to the internal meeting, or is there a deadline?
Right up until the internal meeting is fine. Ideally, don't do that because I'll want to look through them and sort them in case they're not perfectly, put in the right place. But yes, no, we won't be stopping it until basically the thing itself. Otherwise, we also have, yes, quite important. Next week is our debate on the motion that this House regrets the rise of positive discrimination. But more importantly, it is our Godkin debate for best novice/maiden speaker. It's basically for people who their first year of university level debate speaking was this year. If you've already spoken and given a maiden speech this year, you're still eligible. But yes, please do that. It's our probably second most prestigious award, as our other internal debate, the Dufferin, is for just overall best speaker. So yes, if you are a new member of the society, please do speak to that. It's worth pointing out that Mr. Bradley, what is Mr. Bradley? He's not by his computer, how very strange.
Hello.
There he is. Mr. Bradley is our Godkin winner from 2016. And Mr. Hogan over here is our Godkin winner from 2014.
1990.
But yes, I'm quite happy to have a Godkin speaker from a good few years ago back. So yes, it is a prestigious award indeed, and we shall actually have a physical thing to give you this time. But yes, okay, we'll do this now. So most of you, if not all of you, should be on the Literific forum by now. As all of you have probably noticed, we had a poll earlier in the week about which of the right charities to support. Mr. Outreach Officer, I do believe that Shelter NI topped that poll, and as we discussed in Council and as I mentioned at the meeting last week, we want to put that to a ratifying vote of the House. So before we do that, does anybody have anything they'd like to say on the motion that this House would support Shelter NI as our charity for the year? You can speak in favour of it if you want to say nice things about Shelter, if you'd like to say anything about the others. No? No? Okay. In that case, I move this House to a vote. Might as well do this entirely properly. So, can I get a seconder for the motion of this House would support Shelter NI?
Aye.
All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All those against, raise your hand and say nay. Nay. I was going to take that as a unanimous vote. We'll figure out the numbers there. That was 2 against, and all those abstaining say meh. Okay, so that was 2 against, 0 abstaining, and we'll figure out the ayes once we do the head count. So excellent, the motion passes. Shelter NI shall be our supported charity for the year. Those who go later. Yes, so this is quite important, less so much for people who normally sit over here, but very important for you fine folks over here. As all of you should be aware by now, we record the audio of our debates. What? Indeed, shock horror. The microphone sits over here, and as you've noticed, it has to pick up audio from everyone. So that's from Edmund all the way over there to Lily right here, which means it's both a good microphone and also it has its settings set quite high, which means it picks up even the slightest noise if it's quite close to it. So basically, if you sit over here, please do not use this table. This table is not for your use. This is for this table is for the recording apparatus only. Don't bang on the table, don't set things on it, and generally try and keep your whisperings in this corner to the lowest level possible, because if any of you are listening back to it, indeed, I mean, it really just drowns out everything else, especially if you've got a speaker who doesn't project quite as much as I. So yes, just be aware of that. And finally, a few short things. If anyone hasn't paid yet, you can do that, £5. If anybody hasn't gotten a card yet and has paid, you can get that tonight. If anyone has a card but hasn't got a membership number, again, speak to me at the end, we'll get you sorted. This evening we shall be adjourning to the woodworkers, and also just doing a little bit council, stick your hand in the air, give a wave to the members. Hello. We meet, great that they're all bunched together there. We meet every Monday at 5 roughly. And you've probably seen me post the agendas on the Literific forum. That's open to anyone can come along to that. I mean, not gonna lie, I can't really think of huge many reasons why you actively want to, unless you're really fond of the democratic process and all that. But still, transparency is good and whatnot, so if you're inclined, do that. And if any of you have any aspirations, grand designs to sit on the council one day yourselves, then coming on to the council is a good thing to be able to say you've done in your speech at the end of the year. So I believe that's all of the announcements.
I have an announcement about last week.
Is this about the missing chair?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, I'd like to hear this.
Just to explain, right, I was going to get Councillor Emmett McDonough-Brown, who's an Alliance Councillor in South Belfast, to be our guest chair last week. Unfortunately, due to personal circumstances, he wasn't able to make it, and he asked me to just pass on an apology to the House.
That's absolutely no problem at all. I'm sure that I can speak on behalf of the House when I say that. Apologies are most certainly graciously accepted. Admittedly, it's not quite as fun as the idea. He was wandering about Queens for 2 hours and accidentally stumbled into like a conservative youth debate or something, but still, yes. Other than that, I shall now move us on to the second item of business for this evening. Last week, we debated the motion of this House needs NI to have a post-secretariat election. And now to read the minutes of that 7th ordinary meeting, I introduce our Secretary, Mr. Peter Dunn.
Good evening, everyone. The 7th ordinary meeting of the 169th session of the Literary and Scientific Society took place on Thursday, the 9th of November, and was attended by 62 members. After the usual pleasantries had taken place, private members' business was begun by our Treasurer, Mr. John MacDonald. He recited Remember, Remember, 8th of November, fake news, Putin and Trump. He then proceeded to ask the opinion of the House of Trump's time in office thus far. Our resident American, as ever, gave a well-brief overview of the effect that Trump had had thus far, citing the people negatively affected by immigration reforms, but heralded the rise of the left of the country had seen during his time in office. Mr. Scott Moore wondered if anybody could in fact think that Trump was a good thing. The President then read a piece of business put forward by yet again Mr. Finbar Rogers. This week, however, the business was of particular interest. It advocated for Literific to somehow acquire a pet. But not just any pet. Mr. Rogers believed that the Literific is in desperate need of a wombat. This plea was seconded by our dairy intake officer, Mr. Matthew Bradley. His well-evidenced and impassioned defence was, I think, somewhat inspiring. He suggested the use of the wombat would be to attach a plate to its back to thus ferry candy from Candy Corner all the way to the tech stand over there. Honorary Life member Mr. Karen Gallagher, in a surprise turn of events, suggested why the bloody hell we were discussing such matters, but then recommended that if we were to get an animal, it should be one with limited hearing, so it doesn't have to be exposed to our drivel. Miss Karen Campbell commented on the resignation of the Secretary of State for International Development, Miss Priti Patel, and how it overshadowed everyone's favourite toff, Bojo. His decision to further a prison sentence, which was most likely an innocent citizen, and thus she argued that Mr. Johnson should be the one who should really be getting sacked, and this was met with an unsurprising applause from the House. President Black then moved things forward to his depressing questions. I've been told it was his favourite moment of the week. The President was asked by Ms. Karen Campbell what the President had eaten that day. I made the executive decision that unless questions regarding food evoke a sufficiently interesting response from the President, they'll be struck for the minutes.
Yeah.
Mr. Rupert Doherty, furthering a question from the week before, asked if the Divine Comedy was indeed the President's favourite band. Mr. Doherty was under the impression that our President had a decent music. I can confirm that he clearly doesn't. The President then proceeded to tell us what his second favourite band was. Not anybody asked that question. And the President then introduced the motion that this House believes Northern Ireland can have a post-secretary election. And he took a vote on prior opinion, which read 22 votes in favour, 17 against, and 9 abstentions. Opening the debate this evening was a splendidly attired Mr. Hillian Thornton. He argued that despite the two largest parties of the north of Ireland being at loggerheads, there are parties who have been waiting in anticipation to get the government back up and running. He went on to define exactly what the term sectarian meant, citing the differences between a general and Northern Ireland definition. Surprise, surprise, there was a difference. He vowed to the House to have the vision to believe that Northern Ireland can have a post-secretary election, stating that it was imperative for the country to do so. Mr. John MacDonald then opened the debate for the opposition. He started by explaining what Northern Ireland having a post-sectarian election would mean in reality. He stated it meant a stop for calls for a border poll and the Catholic versus Protestant politics that we see today. Mr. MacDonald noted that it had been 20 years since the Good Friday Agreement, but during this time we've seen Stormont boycotted again and again. He also argued that when the red line of forming government is culture, which has come over the Assembly making decisions over areas such as health, shows that Northern Ireland is still clearly sectarian. Continuing the debate for the proposition was Mr. Finbar Rogers, Honorary Life member. He had a rather comical take on the evening's motions. His musings range from Belfast Central Station being in the arse end of nowhere, to inevitably that society as a whole will not exist as we know it. He argued that the chinks in the armour of Sinn Féin and DUP are evident, and thus vowed to the audience to support the motion. Continuing the debate for the opposition was Mr. Kieran Gallagher. He stated that he didn't wish to be on this side of the House this evening, but his involvement with student politics had led him to only one conclusion. He mentioned the problematic situation Northern Ireland has been left in terms of Brexit, and then he finished by saying that Northern Ireland needed to step beyond the cultural ties of nationalism and unionism in order to have a post-sectarian election. Mr. Rupert rounded off the debate for the proposition. He started out with a shout out to his dad, who had apparently explained to him exactly what sectarian means.
Yeah.
It's alright, I'm still coming to terms with it too, and I've been here for 3 years. Ever the optimist, he put forward that this has been the years of the things that shouldn't have happened. And we got Trump and Brexit, so why wouldn't Northern Ireland have a post-sectarian election? He argued that the current state of affairs was a consequence of weak political leadership and not innate oversight in Northern Ireland. Our external convener then rounded off the proceedings by concluding the opposition. He argued that the House had not heard anything from the proposition that suggested in any meaningful way that a stop from ever occurring of a swing to nationalism or unionism was possible. He also stated that the supposed notion that the parties who aren't DUP or Sinn Féin and not sectarian should be quashed. By concluding, he stated the Good Friday Agreement would need to be changed to thus eradicate sectarianism at an institutional level, and thus from the motion to pass. He said if this was happened, we would no longer be dealing with Northern Ireland as we conceive it currently. Questions were then heard from Ms Christine Fleming, Ms Isha Bellis, Mr Scott Moore, Mr Colgan and Mr Ryan Smith. A vote was then taken on speakerability, which had 5 votes for, 12 against and 11 abstentions. Thus, the motion was rejected. May I take minutes of vote?
Aye. Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. And can I get a big round of applause for Mr. Bryson and the boys? So yes.
When is the next tape dropping?
That's the question that we're all dying to hear the answer to. When is the next tape dropping, Mr. Bryson?
Just you need to give James its time.
Okay, that's understandable. We went with bated breath. So, let's get this show on the road, shall we? Next up is private members' business. And once again, I really do quite like this. We have some more private members' business sent in by email, but this time, not in fact by Mr. Finbar Rogers. I know, shocker, again. So, the first piece of private members' business comes from our... Yes, that was in my list of items, and I missed it. Blast, because it was buried underneath something else. Yes, that will. You need to work in the questions somehow.
Okay.
I think you gotta be smart. That's it dying, isn't it? I wonder what that was. Anyway, so yes, our first piece of private members' business comes from the person I believe Mr. Dunn referred to as our resident American, is that correct? Ms. Dalbes. So, Ms. Dalbes, your email was a tad brief. I'm not entirely sure quite understood what I told you to send me an email. It basically contained like one line. It was meant to be like something for me to say to the house. But nevertheless, I know what you're aiming for. So Ms. Dalbes has informed me that a childhood friend of hers, I'm definitely in the right email, can't I? I am not, I'm in a different one. A childhood friend of hers by the name of Mr. Is it Adil Fernandez?
Yeah, that's his name.
Adil Fernandez, and has just gotten married to his fiancée, Miss Talisha Tomaso.
Yes.
Excellent, I got those right. And Miss Dallas, I understand you would like the house to send a motion of congratulations
Yes.
to them. So, yes, can I get a seconder to this motion of congratulations? Excellent. All those in favour of sending a motion of congratulations to the newly wedded and happily married couple who are friends of Miss Dallas, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. All those against, raise your hand and say nay. All those I want you to do one. All those abstaining from the motion, please raise your hand and say nay. A few nays. But quite clearly, the ayes had it, So there we go. The King's University of Belfast Literary and Scientific Society officially extends its congratulations to Mr. Fernandez and Mr. Nasser. The second item of emailed private members' business was from Irish Times second round contestant, Mr. Nairn. Also, I think I'm going to call you Bingo Genius from now on, as he is the inventor of the bingo card, which does not feature this week, as it's currently under renovations, let's say. So he writes, Dear Mr. President, as a connoisseur of cinema, I know Irish accents, as a connoisseur of cinema and a student of the Shakespearean ways, I would like to inquire as to the House's opinion on the upcoming release of Sherlock Gnomes, sequel to 2011's critically acclaimed masterpiece Romeo and Juliet. The film contains an all-star cast, including Emily Blunt and renowned feminist Johnny Depp. The film revolves around the mysterious disappearance of the iconic Romeo, along with an assortment of other sentient garden ornaments, and is surely set to be as thrilling a production as its predecessor. Would you like me to include postscript, or is it unnecessary?
The postscript was written under the assumption I wouldn't be here, but I think it's still relevant. So yeah.
Fair enough. Some of you may have noticed Mr. Mayor's absence for the past few weeks. This postscript should probably explain it. It says, all I do is rehearsals. Oh, God, please, help me, please. So yes, he has managed to slip away this evening. More skilled at great work, very efficient like that. So yes, who here in the house has an opinion on the upcoming, what is sure to be blockbuster of the, it's coming out in the winter, or is it coming out next year?
Coming out early next year.
Early next year, the spring of next year, Sherlock Gnomes. Mr. Russell, no, sorry, Mr. Russell, Mr. Doherty. All the Irish can't find us at the same thing. Go ahead.
We've got different colour hair and completely different accents.
I don't see hair or accents. Very people. Yes. Anyway, your opinion on that, sir?
I think it's a shame to get an American to play such an iconic English character as Sherlock. Well, as Sherlock Holmes at least, and I think it's even worse than to make Sherlock Holmes a gnome. My other point is, why are they making a sequel to something that wasn't massively successful in the first place? 6 years later. They didn't do this with The Room, they didn't do this with Pandemic, or the new RoboCop film that came out a few years ago. So why are they doing it with this?
Indeed, very peculiar. Does anybody have any thoughts on that, Mr. Bradley?
Personally, I think it cannot be worse than Series 4 of Sherlock. Childhood friend. It wasn't a dog, it was his friend. Amazing. It's not a spoiler if the plot's already dreadful. Personally, I don't mind that Sherlock Holmes has been transposed into a gnome. I personally think that the many criminals he's had to deduce the crimes of would have been taken by complete surprise if it turned out that their plans were foiled by a small garden ornament. The fact that an American's been cast in a role, quite frankly, I think it's a nice change from listening to the voice of esteemed actor Battlefield Counter-Strike.
Very good. All those who think Sherlock Season 4 was not an utter traitor and disaster of a television series, please speak to me next week. Any other thoughts on the motion, Mr. Rogers?
Yeah. It has absolutely no relevance, only a most tenuous link. But you mentioned Johnny Depp.
Yes.
There's a biography of Jerry Conlan published recently. Before Ronnie imprisoned for the part of the pub bombings. Before, written by Johnny Depp. And it's absolutely no relevance, but I'm still struggling to understand how and why that happened. So I just wanted to mention it.
Fair enough. If anybody has read that book, do they have any thoughts on the matter?
Jerry.
No. Okay, back to the original issue of the film. I'll take one final point. Mr. Mayor, how can I say no?
It cannot be any worse than the Emoji Movie.
I think that sums it up pretty well. I don't believe there was a motion in there that required voting on. So, are there any other items of private members' business? Ooh, Mr. McDonald, Twitter?
So a painting sold recently for 450 million. That's, just to put that in perspective for everyone, that's 2 weeks of the Brexit deal that Boris Johnson promised.
Mr. McDonald, 450 million, what, rubles, puffs, dollars?
So I was just wondering, how can we afford to spend that money on paintings when there are people starving in the world?
You're a Tory.
I know. My wife I wonder what everyone else thinks.
Interesting point there, Mr. McDonald. Highly unexpected. Yes, Mr. Clark.
Well, clearly, because the owner of that capital wanted the painting more than to feed people. And therefore, the invisible hand has made it so.
Oh my.
It's best for all of us in the long run.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Look, all these starving people need to do is pull themselves up by their bootstraps and buy their own $350,000 paintings. Or make their own.
Yeah. Any other points on the motion, Ms. Bellis?
While I do believe that these paintings are timeless and are an important part of culture, this painting was a painting of Leonardo da Vinci. I do believe it is a symptom of the world's greed and of the inequality of our world, our economic inequality. And I believe this is something that must be addressed.
I completely agree. If there was any justice in the world at all, that money would have gone straight into the coffers of this fight society. Clearly there is not. So, Mr. Glasgow.
This is a new piece of private members' business.
What? No, okay, one final point on that.
Were I an individual with $450 million that I could throw at a painting, I would not only purchase that painting, I would make that painting into a soup and then eat it.
Wonderful, simply wonderful. I'll take one final item of private members' business. Glasgow.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to know the House's thoughts on an issue. There has recently been a series of allegations levelled against members of Parliament of sexual harassment, and I wanted to know the House's thoughts on the alleged culture of sexual harassment within the Houses of Parliament.
Thank you, Mr. Glasgow. Yes, Mr. Perry.
I think the allegations are definitely serious, but I think society has reached a stage now where someone could make an allegation against someone that mightn't necessarily be true, and without any proof, and then automatically that person's career or in politics or whatever would be absolutely ruined without any evidence being made. So I think that's something people have to consider, that these allegations are terrible, but there has to be proof behind these allegations.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Would anyone care to respond? Ms. Belder, HLM and training officer.
It's all well and good, and I'm sorry, am I allowed to make a point at him? Yeah, cool, okay. It's all well and good, and I completely agree with you. I'm not going to throw it at him, don't worry. But sexual harassment is not something that you can categorically always get proof for. If someone comes up to you and touches your behind, you can't turn around and go, oh, did anyone else see that? Because that's not how it works. It's the most painful thing that can happen to a lot of people, and it's a complete disease of society at the moment that it has become so normal. It is amazing that people want to stand up and say it now, and I completely agree, because false allegations can completely ruin someone's life. But at the end of the day, you have to step back and go, they're making those allegations for a reason, something else has happened there. It's either in their life or the life of the other person. You really have to kind of be like, there may not necessarily be any proof, but there's a reason behind why they've said that at the end of the day.
Interesting point, Ms. Belder. Did anybody care to... I should be standing there last week, Mr. Galvin. Mr. Doherty.
That is the stupidest thing ever.
I think the worst thing about this, and the thing that shows that this should have been dealt with earlier, and the worst thing about it is that this is something that goes right to the top of British politics, because about 4 years ago, I believe, there were several allegations made against former Prime Minister Edward Heath, and those allegations were looked into for a few weeks and then completely ignored for 4 years, and now been completely ignored for over 4 years. So I think that this is clearly a long-term problem, and one that should be sorted out as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. I'll take one final...
There is also a decently recent allegation against one of the main runners of a YouTube channel I follow, and I remember the stories that they went to HR, and they pretty much went to HR for a year, but they never looked into it at all. There was horrendous allegations, like, like sex toys being forced on them and stuff like that, but like, it never even went past HR, and like, several women came to them being like, look, he's done something to us, like, you need to sort this out, and it didn't even go like forward. So I think it's just a problem in society with like, if like, because there's a lot of actresses as well that are like saying they didn't want to speak out in case they got blacklisted, and there's many other people who have said that they have spoken out against this, but they were kicked off sets, they were ostracized from the roles that they played, and it is a problem that we have to deal with, that you should talk about these things and not be blacklisted for it, and it should get sorted and treated seriously.
It occurs to me that this is, I suppose, one of the most pressing issues facing society at the moment. So, Mr. Dublin, if you'd still like to make a point, I will continue on a little bit longer.
Well, what I was going to say is that I think the issue with it currently lies in the parliamentary sphere about what actually the mechanisms are for within Parliament. It's clearly there are many shortcomings here with how they actually investigate it and how that's reported to media, those who are making the claim or those who the claims are being made against, which we saw culminate recently with a Labour councillor who committed suicide due to allegations that were made against him, of which he never heard the result of the investigation of. Also, the role of the media and what it has to play in this is that essentially the effect of all these investigations across the board are effectively diluted by the fact that they act as judge, jury and executioner on these issues. That whether someone is in good or in terrible public standing and what the media thinks of that, then that can decide the case before it happens, which is going to cause people on both sides of where this debacle falls and how they're going to come forward on it. So that's what I would keep in mind when I think we're thinking about this and how to move forward on solving it.
Thank you, Mr. Dublin. Next turn to you. Would anybody else like to say anything? Mr. O'Neill, Social Officer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think in a lot of cases there actually are like whistleblowing sort of legislation. I think a big problem is actually that a lot of women don't come forward whenever it happens to them, and in ways they feel guilt and shame for absolutely no reason. And I think there's like a culture that needs to change that. I think with regard to our side of the fence, I think we have to have honest conversations with ourselves on how we treat 50% of the population. Nights out, boys slapping girls in inappropriate areas, you see it and you don't say stuff. I think men also have to be part of the discussion as much as it is about women. There's a lot of attitudes that need to change, and I think they are changing, but I think we need to keep pushing that and be brave and strong and stand up for women's rights.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Anyone have a final start?
So they've done studies about reports of sexual assault, and the vast majority of them are found to be true. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them, up to 95%. And also the problem is that of the amount of sexual assault that is alleged in society, it's estimated that about 1 in 5 women will be sexually assaulted in their lifetime, but only about 10% of those are reported, and only about 3% of those reported actually get a trial, and only about 1 or 2% is found guilty. It's a very, very small number, and it's a really, really big problem in the criminal justice system. And I think the overwhelming thing that we have to do in society is, as Con said, change our culture and believe women, and it's not just women who are sexually assaulted, men are sexually assaulted as well. People who are trans and gender non-conforming are as well. So we have to believe people when they come forward.
Thank you, Ms. Ballas. I shall now move us on to President's questions, and in a slight change of pace, although not entirely unprecedented, we shall start off with a question from me. Mr. O'Neill, what would you like the House to know about the Christmas dinner?
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so Christmas dinner is, oh my god, what day is it? It's on the 11th of December, which is on Monday. It'll take place at 6:30 and it's in Kitch. It's going to be £21 a ticket, and I think it's £10 a head for a deposit, so like it'll obviously still add up to 21. Names and deposits as soon as possible, please. I'll need to get numbers definitely by probably next Wednesday, Thursday, sort of. So even like email in or write in, that'd be great.
Yes. You can email any of us. Emails on the website, or Facebook is fine as well, of course. But if you would like to attend, then let us know. Let us know your name at the very least. The deposit is also presumably required by a certain date. So just Monday the 11th, we'll make a post on the Literific on the official page to keep you reminded about that. Otherwise, yes, are there any other President's questions? Mr. Solomon?
I'm going to shamelessly steal a question from my colleagues in the proposition. Mr. President, if you could be any planet, which planet would that be?
Any planet?
Planet.
One that actually has stuff on it.
That's an interesting question. I'm simply going to go with. Oh, I see. So I'm really slow today. It literally just dawned on me right there what you were gunning for. I felt myself about to walk into it. I'm going to say any planet other than Mars. That's right. You're the. You're the
President supports our side of the
you're the prop. I've been playing. Does anybody have a pocket mirror that I can say Shim resign into? Shim resign? Deary me. Right, moving swiftly out for that catastrophe. Mr. Mirror, please say something that will make you look good.
In the last week, Donald Trump tweeted, "Why would Kim Jong-un insult me by calling me fat when I would never call him short and fat? Oh well, I try so hard to be his friend, and maybe someday that will happen." Have you ever been tempted to use your privileges as president to rain scorn upon your enemies?
I mean, tempted. No, because tempted implies not acting upon that urge. I never stop. It's just left and right, hitting people with the giant stick that is the presidency. I mean, like I said last week, I will not rest until everyone is oppressed beneath my boot heel. That's the ultimate goal, and ultimately it will be good for the society. So surely you should all support that, yes? No? Oh, fine. Okay, let's move it quickly on. You'll regret that one day, I assure you. Mr. Perry.
Follow up on Mr. Moore's point, Mr. President, would you ever consider setting up an official, verified president of the Literific Twitter account? Updated on your daily business.
Please, no. Did verified still exist? Did they not all break and explode and burn down? I mean, I do like shiny, icons and all that, but no, personally, as someone who only has a Facebook account, for the needs of keeping in contact with the rest of council and society. No, I do not want any more social media networks. I want to disappear into a cave in Alaska and never be seen from again. That's my dream. Any final President's questions? Mr. Glasgow.
What do you, Mr. President, think about the popular high street bakery Greggs replacing an image of the baby Jesus with an image of a sausage roll?
I saw that image just today. In fact, it was shown to me by our technology officer, Mr. Matthew Bradley. I was thoroughly confused. I was hoping that there was some additional context. Mr. Bradley informed me that no, there wasn't. It's just a photo of a sausage roll where the baby Jesus should be. So, my thoughts are that I'm confused and a wee bit hungry. Yes, so I think that does it for President's questions for this week. So I shall move us on to the vote on prior opinions. So a reminder that this vote is simply on your opinion on the motion. Right now, if we were making a binding vote and we were the governing body of this fine country, this would be what you're voting to happen. So, could all those who are in favour of the motion of this House would stop funding for Mars exploration, please raise your hand and say aye! Aye. Keep them up, So count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, Mr. Secretary?
I'd stand with
11. Can all those who would like to oppose the motion, please raise your hand and say nay! Nay! Keep them up, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, Mr. Secretary. There's some behind you. So 27. And all those who would like to abstain on the motion, please raise your hand and say meh. Meh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Mr. Secretary. So I believe the opposition had it there by quite a margin.
Yes.
Okay, so that's interesting to see where we stand. So, the final item of business before the debate kicks off is an introductory address by our guest chair this evening. And for once, I have actually done some due diligence. So, if I may offer a brief introduction by our esteemed guest chair this evening. Dr. John Holsworth sits before you. He is a lecturer in environmental microbiology in the School of Biological Sciences here at Queen's, and a committee member of several NASA and NASA/European Space Agency expert panels, including those on life detection, planetary protection, special regions of Mars, and bioethics of searching for life. He also sits on astrobiology grant review panels for the EU Research Agency and NASA Astrobiology Institute, and has published papers with more than 200 collaborators. These include the Chief Scientist for Mars Exploration at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, David Beatty, and the Senior Scientist for Astrobiology at NASA Headquarters, Mary Wojtek. It's a lovely surname. So yes, most definitely one of the most qualifying guests we have ever had graced this house, I think since the refinding a good few years ago. So without any further ado, I do welcome him to give his introductory address.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the House for this invitation to chair the session, which I'm very much looking forward to. So the House has the motion that the House would stop funding for Mars exploration. And first of all, I just want to briefly say one or two words for that motion and one or two words against that motion. For the motion, I'm no economic expert, but there is obviously an inordinate cost to Mars exploration, and maybe there's much more expertise on that issue here. That's one definite issue against it. The issue of polluting or contaminating extraterrestrial environments and space itself is another big issue, a moral dilemma, a technical problem, and an issue on different levels. The issue of losing terrestrial resources into space is another problem. There may be more expertise in this room than I have. There's one particular precious metal which I can't remember the name of, which is quite essential as a component of spacecraft, and we're removing almost all of it from Earth and sending it into space. I assume maybe someone will talk about that here, but we are losing important resources. And then there's an ethical problem, a religious dilemma. What will the world's great religions make of it if we discover life that may not be extant life, that may be extinct life, it may be simply a biomolecule, some form of protein, or some other quite definitive biosignature of life? What will happen on Earth in terms of religion? How will people deal with that? In terms of issues against the motion, I think almost every child, I have 2 young children, and I can certainly say my own children, every child and possibly every adult has fundamental questions in their heart. Where did we come from? What is it to be human? Is there life anywhere else? Did life originate on Earth? And things like this. Questions to do with space exploration, and at the moment we have technical ability to explore Mars more than anywhere else, capture something fundamental in the human psyche. It's just fascinating, and almost regardless of culture, regardless of gender, age, or anything else, people are captivated with that issue. The technologies that are catalysed by space exploration, I'm not an expert necessarily in those technologies, but a lot of military hardware and software has been devised through space exploration. Many materials, a lot of technology. I assume there's expertise here beyond mine on that issue. Even though space exploration, especially at the moment Mars exploration, is about extraterrestrial environments. One of the main things we get from that is understanding Earth. We understand our terrestrial situation in relation to biophysics, astrophysics, in relation to technology, and many scientific intellectual issues because of intellectually and technically being in space and being able to see the Earth in the context in which it is. And Mars exploration has an inherent value at that level. Finally, there are so many questions at an intellectual level which are pan-disciplinary, which frankly would never be asked if we weren't going to Mars or contemplating going to Mars. Questions which have a relevance to science and a relevance on Earth. And I, from personal experience in my own research, and I think for humanity in general, it's intellectually invigorating to take your mind at least somewhere else and be able to look back and see where you are. Maybe a little bit to live in Japan 20 years ago and to completely go outside your own culture, in that case outside the Western world, really helped you to look back on the Western world and to some extent see what it is, and maybe vice versa. And I feel the same in relation to space research to some degree. So those are one or two for and against arguments. I'm sure we'll learn a lot more in the process of this debate. So first of all, I'd like to very much look forward to inviting our first speaker, Mr. Ted Pine, who will give a speech for the proposition.
Good evening, members of the House, fellow proposition, opposition, and esteemed chair. It's with great honour that I open tonight's debate in the motion that this House would stop funding Mars exploration. As first prop, it's my duty to define the motion. As it stands, members of this House pay some form of tax, part of which goes to the UK Space Agency and ESA. Tonight's motion asks this House to question if they are happy that these agencies are spending their tax money effectively by funding Mars exploration. Therefore, we're defining the term funding to mean to come from the taxpayer in general. This House is not being asked to question the merits of space exploration, but simply the exploration of Mars. And let it be clear that we, the proposition, are not against space exploration. We see and acknowledge what can be learned from exploring the vast depths of space. I feel there is going to be agreement on both sides of the House as to our goals within space exploration. Those goals being the advancement of our knowledge of science, the universe, and hopefully the discovery of extraterrestrial life. It is our methodology whereby we disagree. Space, and indeed our solar system, is a vast expanse waiting to be explored. I fear that the skyrocketing popularity of Mars in recent pop culture, vis-a-vis Matt Damon in The Martian, has blinded us all as to what exactly our goal was in the very beginning. With all the extensive exploration and study of Mars to date, it is becoming more and more clear that, relatively speaking, Mars is now a barren, empty rock. Although the prospect of life existing there still remains, either today or in the past, the likelihood of finding such life is becoming ever smaller. Yet we still dedicate vast resources to the red planet, when more viable alternatives exist in our solar system.
Certainly there's a potential for a return on that investment if there is precious materials on Mars. Certainly it would be useful as a mining location.
Okay, so Mars from mining is, if you look at, say, capturing asteroids or comets, that's a lot more, we can have a very high content of rare metals. That would be a much more, you'd get a lot more money from capturing an asteroid than having to go to a planet that might have some bit of materials, whereas if we look at what is in our solar system, we can maybe spend a little bit more time and a little bit more research in capturing that resource and mining it rather than just going for what we see straight away. Look at what we have around us first and then see where we can get the most economic benefit. Yet we still dedicate vast resources to the red planet. More viable alternatives exist in our solar system. Jupiter's moons, Europa, Callisto, and Ganymede, are all suspected of having liquid water under their ice-encrusted surfaces. Europa, the most widely known of Jupiter's moons, was proven in 1990 by the Galileo probe have an ocean of water under its icy crust. When we know oceans of extraterrestrial water exist, why is it that we scrape the surface for any sign of its presence on Mars? Why not go to where we know there's an abundance of water to study and learn from? Jupiter's moons are not the only treasure trove waiting to be discovered. The ice-encrusted moon of Saturn, Enceladus, offers up so much more in the way of potential life than Mars. The Cassini space probe has measured water plumes spewing out of the poles of this moon into space, identifying vital ingredients for life. There exists salty liquid water, a geothermal heat source, and organic compounds within Enceladus. Comparable potential for life just does not exist on Mars.
On that point, sir,
yeah.
Do you not feel that with Mars, as it's sort of popularised in popular culture, would be a good first step in that context to catch the public's attention much the same way the moon landings did?
I think it's already captured public opinion. We as a proposition, we're not saying that past exploration of Mars was bad. It's obviously been a good thing because we're talking about it and we're debating about it. But we've gotten to the stage where we know much more about other planets and moons in our solar system, that they are a better end goal, that they are a better place to go and discover. So I guess Mars has been good in the past and we're not denying that, but there's other more interesting bodies out there to explore. So comparable potential life just does not exist on Mars. Whilst our probes are literally being spat in the face with possible extraterrestrial organisms, we continue to bury our heads in the red sands of Mars. A page needs to be taken from NASA planetary scientist Chris McKay, who I quote when speaking about Enceladus. I was obsessed with life on Mars for many years. I'm now abandoning my first love and going after this other one that's shown me what I wanted to see. The opposition's stubbornness is clouding their judgment. They fail to see that to achieve the goal we both share, to find extraterrestrial life and learn about our universe, they need to let go and abandon the love affair with the planet next door. I beg the House to propose this motion.
On behalf of our guest chair, I'd like to thank you for your maiden speech. Can we get another round of applause? Pointing out to the speakers for the debate that we have 4 more maiden speakers this evening. It is tradition that in your maiden speech you may preemptively waive all points of information if you so wish. So that means no one is allowed to even stand up and say point of information. If any of you would like to avail of that, just give me a wave or something at the beginning and I'll say to the House, right, no points of information. There's no shame in it, it is your first speech. It's just to ease you into this whole debating thing that you're so unfamiliar with. So it's there if you want it. So just there you go. So yes, our next speaker is first for the opposition, former Godkin winner, Mr. Conor Hogan.
This is my hat that I use. I wear whenever I'm going to space or I talk about going to space. So, esteemed speakers of opposition, sheriff version, and members of the board. Tonight we're talking about Mars. I'll briefly take you through some of our arguments, why we think Mars is important specifically. And then in my speech I'll focus on why we need public funding specifically for both unmanned and unmanned exploration. And if I have time, which I probably won't, I'll even lay out exactly how I think we can get more funding in a reasonable manner. The first speaker talked a lot about exploring other targets of potential more interest, and I'd be inclined to agree to a large extent. But myself and my fellow opposition are here tonight to convince you why we must go to Mars and why we must go soon. And also, of course, why we won't have fun. So the most obvious reasons are of itself. As Lord will explain further, I'm sure we know, there are mounting crises here on our home planet, and no guarantee that things will always be as strong and stable as they are now. Climate disasters, resource depletion, and overpopulation are all issues that could easily be existential for our species. Mars is not a catch-all solution, but even if we figure a way around our man-made problems, there's no guarantee that we'll be safe a century from now. Quite the contrary. And it behooves us to swallow our pride and accept that although we're a technically advanced civilization, there are still many things that are simply beyond our control. Asteroid impacts, gamma ray bursts, supernovae, superviruses. Yes?
If we had the technology to colonize Mars, surely we could colonize the Sahara to deal with overpopulation, or blow up an asteroid to prevent an asteroid impact.
Okay, good point. I would say that I agree that we should try and it's an imaginative idea, but I like the idea of trying to colonize this colonize the Antarctic. But I think you can chew bubblegum and walk at the same time. There's a reason for doing that helps with the population, but Mars helps us with those Earth issues, but also has much more to offer that we can only get by leaving Earth. I think we'll all go into it at some point. As the writer, Ray Bradbury put it, it's only by going to Mars that we can live forever. The most naive position here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, surely, is the belief that we as a species can continue indefinitely on this planet. The second reason that we think we should go to Mars, and go soon, is for scientific development. As one of the Apollo 8 astronauts said after coming back, we came all this way to explore the moon, and the most important thing is that we discovered the Earth. The biggest benefits that came from the Apollo program had nothing to do with the moon, and more to do with new technology that arose from the mission and the challenges that it gave scientists. It and other missions have given us the following technologies, for example: flame-resistant textiles, kidney dialysis machines, CAT scanners, computer microchips, satellite TV, smoke detectors, cordless tools, modern home installation, and perhaps best of all, memory foam. Yes, David?
Yeah, it's great. Space exploration gives us loads of new technologies. We completely agree with you there. We're going to develop the same new technologies going to different objects in our solar system.
Yes. I've said that, no, that's a fair point. Then I should probably clarify for now that a lot of these points do specifically relate to space exploration in general. That's fair, and in that sense, then we may be on agreement. But I'll get into the meat of it now as to why we exactly need to go to Mars specifically. Okay. But before I do, this is exactly why we need public funding from the likes of NASA and why the private sector cannot and will not fill the gap. I think this is an important point to make going forward. Elon Musk's plan for a private Mars mission is entirely impingent on his ability to make a profit from it, and therefore a severe limited case on what science can come. Think of how scientific research on Earth struggles unless it can be publicly funded, and how we end up with tobacco companies funding research that shows that smoking is actually really good for children. But as well as the need to spread humanity as far and as soon as we can, the advantages of Mars exploration for Earth, there is of course the red planet itself and what it can offer. As James experienced, Mars holds an important place in the search for alien life, and a discovery, or lack thereof, will tell us something fundamental, critical about the likelihood of life in the larger universe. Ladies and gentlemen, I study humanities, so naturally I'm better at talking than at science. Yet at the end of my degree, I decided to write a dissertation on the topic of space exploration, because it's not just a question of science. It's a human question. It's a question that involves us all. Through my research, I came to the conviction that we must begin serious public funding for Mars exploration specifically, for all the reasons I've said and will continue saying, but chiefly because if we do not fund it, the private sector will attempt to fill the gap with disastrous implications. Now, although I am certainly on the left of the political spectrum, my opposition to the likes of SpaceX and other private ventures is not simply ideological, and I believe that the work Elon Musk has done in lower Earth orbit is crucial, and I'm sure we've all seen it in the news. But to put it bluntly, and I'm sure we'll get into it more, anyone living or working in a future Martian colony, owned and administered by a private entity, the likes of SpaceX, will be living in an environment of complete isolation, millions of miles from home, with no bargaining power for ensuring their rights against their terrestrial employer. As one writer put it, in the Wild West of outer space, legal niceties are not going to get in the way of profit. Or as another writer more astutely said, on Mars, The very air we breathe can be privatised. It's interesting to note that many of the former Apollo astronauts, most notably Buzz Aldrin, agree with this position, and also the popular science guide, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to increase Mars funding publicly and reconceptualise the project as one that involves all of us in some way. It's part of human nature to be curious and explore, and the proposition's proposal of either staying on Earth forever or focusing solely on other bodies or allowing private interests to take over in the case of Mars is silly. And the question should be asked: where did they see the human species 100 years from now without Mars funding? The worst option surely is to give up. What started me writing on this topic was the realisation that the last time a person stood in the moon was in 1972. And in 44 years and near 2 generations since, we haven't been back. In a world as fractured as ours, an international effort to explore Mars will reignite our collective curiosity, our human solidarity, and unify us in a way not seen since Apollo. As an American speechwriter penned at the time of those first missions, in modern times, in ancient days, men looked at the stars and saw their heroes in the constellations. In modern times, we do much the same, but our heroes are epic men of flesh and blood. Others will follow. Man's search will not be denied.
Thank Mr. Hogan for that talk. And next I'd like to introduce Ms. Louise McCullough, giving a maiden speech for the proposition.
From Mars bars to Bruno Mars, the red planet seems to have been slowly invading our collective unconscious since it was first photographed in 1976. But for a lot of people, seeing hasn't been enough. They want to hear the eerie silence, to stomp on the cold surface, to explore. But while lofty and admirable, is this elevated idea of exploration really practical or even necessary? When I think of exploration, I think of Dora the Explorer, a resourceful and inquisitive girl, albeit somewhat dim. Her and her little animal friends explore with the spirit of adventure with the goal of learning and having fun. Dora didn't have to go to Mars for me to be inspired by her as a child. The idea that only space travel and expansion can inspire children and young people to be investigative, adventurous and imaginative and make greater advances for society is quite misguided. Also, the idea that society will fall apart if we are not pushing, progressing, advancing upon further examination falls apart, because let's be honest, we as a society are falling apart. In the devotion to blindly following the ideal of exploration, to boldly go where no man has gone before, we've ignored what's happening at home. We've messed up the earth. None can deny it, unless you're Trump, who of course doesn't believe in climate change. The earth that is provided for us since the dawn of time has been used and abused, but above all neglected. Resources are running out, even though we have free, unlimited ones. The sun, the wind. Yes, renewable energy has come a long way, but imagine if we'd invested in these essential resources with the same time, money and effort that we've put into the space program.
On that point, madam.
Yes?
Do you not feel that in investing in space exploration we will develop new technologies which better take advantage of these resources?
I think that's true, but I think we need to get our priorities straight and sort out this mess of a world before we try and leave it. If this had been the case, we would most likely be in a much more sensible position to explore space, likely with better, cheaper and more reliable technology. Now, it can't be ignored that some of NASA's research is focused on protecting and understanding Earth through the medium of space. This is commendable and likely their most important function, but in a recent bill, Trump has proposed a 5% cut to NASA's Earth science budget because he thinks they should be focused on deep space and not Earth. He told astronaut Peggy Whitson in a conference call to speed it up as he wants to see humans on Mars in his first term, or at worst his second. Why throw money into rushing a risky journey to Mars in order to satisfy the capricious whims of an unpredictable president whose ego stretches so wide he could probably get to Mars by walking along it? Mars never asked to be a petty symbol of strength for politicians to point at when their policies on Earth are failing. Neither did the moon. Kennedy's proposition of the moon landing hit Congress just 5 weeks after the botched Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, a subject change of celestial proportions. Should complex...
On that point?
No. Should a complex and multifaceted scientific endeavour such as this be so obliviously funded when it can be carried along with the fickle political winds that often change its direction? US President Mike Pence is keen for humans to explore Mars in the near future and has been quoted as saying, "America must be as dominant in space as we are in Earth," which is a statement that reeks of colonialism. Mars notably was also named after the Roman god of war. We as humanity, not even having been to Mars, have already branded it as after one of our most destructive and regrettable pastimes. This gives only a glimpse of the other baggage in attitudes and actions that we would carry along with us if we were to actually set foot on Mars. Much of the interest in exploring Mars comes from its potential to be adapted as humanity's next home when Earth goes bust. But I'd just like to ask, is that really fair? Let's say, for instance, you're given a dog, and it's a great dog, it's really friendly and obedient, and it's always there for you. But that doesn't seem to matter because you neglect it. You leave it to starve until it's emaciated and weak, and when you do need it, you expect it to run and jump and fetch like it used to, and you kick it when it doesn't. But eventually this dog dies, and after a while you feel lonely, so you take another puppy and you claim it as your own. Is that fair? Did you really deserve that new dog? No. And in the same way, why should we reach out and grab another plant to exploit and abuse until it's dry, or in the case of Mars, drier? That's wasteful and irresponsible, and it's the attitude that has gotten us into our current environmental mess. It seems only logical we should take steps to fix and repair the damage that we have already done. No, sorry. Just because we can. Finally, if we did go to Mars, we'd no doubt have to contend with Bowie's famous question, and if there really is intelligent life on Mars, are we really equipped to deal with that at the moment? If aliens were discovered and they were benign, have we developed enough to treat them as such when there are still many groups that we've marginalised that feel like aliens on our own planet? Maybe what we should be exploring instead is better ways to represent them. You don't need red dust under your feet to do this. Worse still, if they are not benign, the world could end up in a worse state altogether. Just because we can doesn't always mean we should, and some things are better left uncovered. Just ask Pandora and all the dead cats. Besides creativity and inspiration thrives in the unknown. If we know everything, where is the mystery and what's left to be imagined?
On that point, madam.
Yes?
Surely Mars is not doing everything. There is much more to discover after Mars.
Or we could discover before Mars, and then when we've patched up the planet a wee bit, we could go on over to Mars. Yes, exploration is important, but as with everything, there has to be limits. We need to be exploring how to deal with an ageing population and how to raise the quality of life of our everyday citizens. And we can explore other planets, Jupiter and Saturn's moons, for instance, but for now at least, let's leave Mars and its potential ice warriors alone.
I'd like to suggest one more round of applause for that very interesting maiden speech. And now I feel honoured to introduce our next speaker. I'll try to pronounce their name correctly. This is another maiden speech for the opposition from Ms. Ran Miao.
Hi, members of the Coalition, my general opposition, chairperson, and members of the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. There is a century of historical controversy about whether Mars is worth exploring. Since the Cold War, many countries have investigated a lot of money on Mars exploration. Interestingly, some people claim that the project is a waste of money because there is no short-term profits. However, our position fully believes that Mars exploration plays a mysterious and fascinating role in the course of development of human beings. So, the money therefore devoted to Mars exploration is worthwhile. Before speaking about my points, there is a premise we have to think about as fundamental human aspirations, which are to reproduce and seek a sustainable habitat. According to academic research, the realistic purpose of Mars exploring is to probe for the signs of life and available resources. At this point, Mars exploration can meet the basic need of human, and we should keep our funding for Mars exploring. I will explore my ideas from scientific development in the point. Yeah.
And which are those basic needs that you're talking about? You can just like.
Sorry?
See, the basic needs that you were talking about, the human, like when we were talking about those basic needs, it's all like a second.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the fundamental of human aspirations, which are to reproduce, just like raise kids, and seek a sustainable habitat. To start with, investing in Mars has a positive effect on promoting the development of science and technology and improving the scientific literacy of the whole generation. Many common everyday services, such as weather forecasting, GPS systems, scientific television, and so on, frequently rely on space infrastructures. And space technologies, they make everything better. Every pound we put into space research comes back to us multiple times over in a variety.
On that point.
Sorry. Such as Cordless tool, because we have to use cordless tools to work in space. So solar power becomes better because of powering satellites. Video game and so on, these are all technology from the space exploration. Space exploration. So now we just imagine another Martian exploration. It's farther and much more difficult. We can learn crop better and entertain humans better. Mars exploration provides scientists with a chance to perfect the advanced theories and apply them into practical organizations. Meanwhile, yes?
Everything you've mentioned there, all the benefits you're saying of Mars exploration, you can also get from exploring other celestial bodies in our solar system. Why does it have to be Mars that we go to? We're not against space exploration as a whole, just Mars. Tell us why Mars is not good.
Thank you for your questions. I will talk about this later and why we choose Mars and can we gain these things from Mars exploration. Meanwhile, in the wake of ever increasing knowledge about the universe as well as the Earth, human beings may somehow be able to solve those long-standing problems that seem to have no solution for now. On the other hand, when an aircraft is launched on Mars, it draws considerable amount of attention, for it allows people to witness the great moment, which leads the popularization of scientific research among ordinary people. We may have another Stephen Hawking, so who knows? Furthermore, scientific development of Mars exploration is beneficial to social issues like resource crisis. As overpopulation is becoming a serious worldwide crisis, it's estimated that the global population will reach to 11 billion by 2040. All the problems such as resource exhaustion, decreasing life quality, farming, poultry, arising therefrom are approaching the limit human can handle. We are in desperate need to search for a new planet for crops, planting, or even making it for our home. It's commonly believed that another suitable habitat for humans is the universe is Mars, which is our closest neighbor. It's a little over half of Earth's size. The axis is similar on Mars as well, which is important. So, oh sorry. You can do that.
So a lot of what you mentioned in terms of these sort of agricultural sort of developments require the terraformation of Mars in the first place. Now, of course, Mars' core is solidified. It's no longer molten, so it does not have a magnetic field, which is why it doesn't retain an atmosphere. So how would you propose that we get across these problems that may be, in fact, insurmountable?
Sorry, could you make it say more and clear?
Sure. So, in order to farm, we must have an atmosphere. Mars does not have an atmosphere because its magnetic field is very weak. It has a solid core, it's not molten. So that's not something we can change, at least within the imagination. So how could we create the circumstances for agriculture to exist, for instance? Is that more clear?
Oh yes,
Awesome.
just like to make Mars to be sustainable. Is that limit?
Basically, there are issues in terms of retaining an atmosphere. How would we retain an atmosphere, even the soil quality itself?
Yes, just like the soil and also about mineral mining, there are a lot of things and there are lots of equipment that these things can be done. I mean, there is a lot of, just like a lot of evidence showing that human can do that, and we should keep funding and just like work on it. Yeah. At the same time, the soil on Mars can grow stuff, assuming we could of course get on Mars, but they have done experiments here on Earth where they simulate Martian regolith or Martian soil, and it's able to sustain crops. So if we could go there, we can grow food. There is also mineral mining, which is really important to create a commercial reason to go to Mars. Mars crust is completely different from ours, therefore it's going to have different minerals. Scientists are thinking the volcanic times of Mars probably have nickel, copper, titanium, iron, a lot of things. These play a very important role in human life. These kind of things are what draws us to Mars exploration. All the above lead up the starting point of Mars exploration to human development, review the history. Our wonder and imagination about outside world has never stopped since we were early hominids. They try to live out from the cave, here bring out the culture. Golden Wars stays there for the new world, here see the different views around the world. A long time ago, my kind of history is exactly originated from human adventures spirit. Look ahead to the future. We already saved robots and probes so much. Actually, when Curiosity landed on Mars, it's really exciting for everybody all over the world. But if humans get on Mars, it's more than inspirational. Sorry, inspiration? No. Okay. People may want to be protagonists. Okay. From what has been discussed about, we can simply draw the conclusion that it's beneficial and necessary to spend money on Mars exploration. Not only can science development benefit from it, but also the culture. Yeah, when I learned from the UK, that's a lyrics. We can also see the bright side of the life. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to propose a further round of applause for that maiden speech. And now, the speaker for the proposition, I'd like to invite Mr. Matthew Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Members of the House. There's been a lot of talk on the opposition side that Mars is somehow this great hope for humanity. That no matter what we do to this world, at least we'll have Mars to go to. You know, we can solve our overpopulation problem. We can colonize it. If a supernova happens, we'll go there instead. So the problem is, with all of these things, that Mars isn't a nice place. And if we could make it a nice place, we could make Earth a hell of a lot better. See, the thing what Mars is, it's a terrifying, inhospitable desert. The air will kill you, because there's not enough of it. If that doesn't kill you, the cancer will, because there's so little atmosphere. The cosmic rays are so much more intense in surface than they are here, that you're going to get cancer a hell of a lot faster than you would on Earth. Furthermore, there's the cost of bringing building materials and such to Mars, because it's kind of hard to set up big logging and mining operations with there's no trees and where you can't import lots of miners. So, they ask where we're going to be in 100 years, say, if not Mars. Well, the answer really is here. I mean, with the cost that would take to properly colonize Mars, we could be building giant orbital cities. We could be building cities on the ocean or beneath the ocean. We could drain the oceans. These are all these are so much more cost effective than colonizing Mars, which says a lot because these things aren't cost effective at all. If we could colonize, no, thank you. If we could colonize Mars, an atmosphereless desert with lots of radiation, we could colonize the massive Sahara or all of Siberia.
On that point, sir.
Yes.
These things aren't mutually exclusive, and most certainly technology that would help us colonize Mars would also help us colonize the Sahara Desert.
Frankly, I think that by the time we would have so much population that we would need to have every square inch of the Earth covered. We wouldn't even need Mars. At that point, we can be sending people to different star systems, which is actually something I'm going to get onto shortly. And finally, they talk a lot about how there's all these technologies to gain through space exploration. You know, we have GPS, we have television. It's just these things aren't anything to do with Mars. And we're not saying, as people on this side have already said, we're not saying we're against space exploration. Space exploration is great. As I said once, I believe humanity's destiny lies within the stars, which I was then told made me a horrible optimist. But technologies that we would gain from going to Mars aren't that useful compared to the technologies we would gain by all the things we've done so far. Now to get on to actual points instead of rebuttal, let's talk about the cost of Mars exploration and what we could be doing instead. In the past decade, we've spent something like $10 billion exploring Mars. It's actually really hard to get exact figures on this, but that was as close an estimate I could get. For this cost, we could do any of the following things. Send 143 astronauts, we could train them, launch them to the ISS, bring them back from the ISS. They do lots of science in the ISS, it's great. We could send up 35 weather satellites. Things which can, for example, predict when hurricanes are going to form. Or, I don't know, that's basically all they're really useful, I think. I'm not a meteorologist. But actually interesting things we can do are, there's an initiative called the Breakthrough Initiatives. And the most interesting one of them is Breakthrough Starshot, which is about a $5 billion program, the idea of which is you make lots of tiny little nano-chip probes, and you send about 1,000 of these to some star system. And with about $5 billion, you can send these to Proxima Centauri B. The whole planned mission here being that with about 30 years after the launch of all of these, they're sending back high-resolution images of a planet that may or may not be inhabitable in a completely different star system. That's so much more interesting than Mars. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it's absolutely interesting, and I would support that in terms of scientific endeavour. The other side of it is how on earth is that useful in terms of, you know, the practical argument that you're trying to make.
It's as useful as Mars, which admittedly isn't very useful. It's also the added bonus that they were saying, oh, what if our sun implodes? Well, then we've got a new sun, and that's much better than being on Mars, because if we're on Mars and our sun implodes, we're dead anyway. Now, there's also talk about how we could go to Mars and we could mine there and gain all these minerals, and it would be great. That's a terrible, terrible idea. It would cost so much money to send all the mining equipment to Mars and then bring all this stuff back. We could instead, for example, capture a massive asteroid, put it in orbit, and mine it there. That's actually a thing that there's vague consideration about doing, because that might actually be cost effective in the future.
On that point.
No, thank you. Other things we can do with the $10 billion we send Mars exploration are giant space telescopes. For example, for about $8 billion, you can get the James Webb Telescope, which is going to be capable of, among other things, looking at the formation of galaxies 100 billion years after the Big Bang. No, thank you. Oh boy, we're running out of time. The last point I'm going to make is about our planet's oceans. 90% of our planet's ocean is completely unexplored. We've got no idea what's down there. And there's loads of really interesting stuff. Like the whole idea of if we can find life on Mars is we can see how life might develop in other conditions other than the ones that we're used to. The conditions at the bottom of the ocean are completely different. There's things that, instead of relying on the sun for all of their energy, which is what basically everything on the surface does, in some form or another, they rely on these hot vents at the bottom of the ocean. You've got crazy alien things down there. There's advances in geology, biology, chemistry we can find down there, And it's so much more cost efficient to search down there now instead of trying to go to Mars now. We can leave Mars for 500 years in the future when we've got warp drive and we can get there in 8 minutes. Right now, we've got to worry about being cost effective with our science. Mars is kind of interesting, but for the same costs we can spend on Mars, we can do so much more stuff, much more cheaply, and that's much more interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Okay, I'd like to introduce a maiden speaker for the opposition, Mr. Lorcan.
Members of the proposition, my fellow opposition, chairperson, and members of the floor, good evening. I'd like to just begin by asking how many people in this room have heard of the Fermi paradox? Anyone?
Heard of what?
The Fermi paradox. Okay, so just summarize it. In 1950, Enrico Fermi, he remarked to his colleagues while walking to lunch one day, where are they? Just out of the blue, but his colleagues immediately knew what he was talking about. Enrico Fermi was one of the most influential physicists of his time, but this remark is what he's become most famous for. So he was referring to the lack of intelligent life to visit the Earth. At lunch, he followed up this remark with a series of back-of-the-envelope calculations showing that, in theory, the Earth should have been visited by intelligent life several times and a long time ago. So simply put, the Fermi paradox is why are we seeing no signs of intelligent life elsewhere in the universe? Many astronomers would estimate that there are about 100 billion stars in the galaxy, giving roughly 1 times 10 to the 22, i.e. 1 followed by 22 0 stars in our universe. Certain stars, however, are unsuitable for the development of intelligent life around them. Taking into consideration all factors such as star size, where a planet orbits around a star, most astronomers would estimate that there are 1,000 planets within our own galaxy capable of sustaining intelligent life. However, we've never had any sort of communication or anything for them. So it is overwhelmingly likely that at this stage in our planet's development, we should have been contacted by some form of intelligent life. However, we haven't. So one of the most widely accepted solutions to the Fermi paradox is that intelligent life, when it develops enough, has a tendency to destroy itself. We can already see the beginnings of this here on Earth. Countries are preparing themselves for nuclear war, climate change is becoming a serious issue, and artificial intelligence is being developed. All of the above have the potential to wipe out the human race. For example, the USA and Russia have nearly 14,000 nuclear warheads between them. A large enough nuclear war, such as any involving America, will have the potential to initially wipe out a vast number of people and then lead to an onset of nuclear winter, potentially hitting the Earth. Questions?
No.
On that point, so surely instead of building all the biodomes on Mars we would need to move a sufficient amount of population to Mars, we could just build nuclear bunkers for much cheaper and much better.
Well, I would rather live in a biodome on Mars than a nuclear bunker. Am I? If there is a nuclear war, the Earth is barren. If there's a nuclear war, the Earth isn't worth living on, I would imagine. 252 million years ago, the Earth heated 28 degrees Celsius over 60,000 years. I just repeat that, 28 degrees Celsius over 60,000 years. And this led to the onset of what's known as the Great Dying. It wiped out the vast majority of life on the Earth. It's predicted that the Earth is going to the temperature of the Earth is going to rise by 3 degrees Celsius over the next 100 years. Now, the parallels there are genuinely concerning. And climate change, if it's not curbed, which with America pulling out of the Paris Agreement, it's not looking likely to be curbed, it could well leave the Earth uninhabitable. I don't overly believe that artificial intelligence is a major issue, but there's a possibility that if artificial intelligence is developed, it could overthrow humanity, so to speak. So, in my opinion, the only way to truly long-term ensure the survival of the human race is to become a multi-planet species. It is inevitable. Mars, as our nearest planet, is our best chance of colonising another planet. It's the place to start, even if it's perhaps not habitable. I believe it is habitable, but it's definitely the starting point. Yeah, go ahead.
Certainly. I mean, there's a question I would like to ask. Why Mars? People have said several times today that this is the best candidate. However, the upper atmosphere of Venus is actually a lot better than, say, the surface of Mars. It's 1 atmosphere, it's 0.9 G, I believe, and it's an average of 20 degrees centigrade already. So why couldn't we try and inhabit the upper atmosphere of Venus rather than be surfaces?
Well, first, basically because Mars does, like, it's quite hard getting the moon penetrate, and getting Mars, basically because it does, it's the starting step. I'm not saying we're going to inhabit Mars, but it's definitely the starting step. I was just like, yeah, so I believe further exploration of Mars, it's the next step in becoming a multi-planet species. And I would just like to quote Stephen Hawking on this. He has said recently, I believe the long-term future of the human race must be in space. It would be difficult enough to avoid disaster on planet Earth in the next 100 years, let alone the next 1,000 or million. The human race shouldn't have all its eggs in one basket or on one planet. Mars is the logical first step in becoming a multi-planet species, and the only way humans will colonize Mars is further research and exploration of Mars. In the long run, our own solar system is going to become uninhabitable as our sun slowly expands and dies. In roughly 1 billion years, the sun is going to expand out, it will evaporate the Earth's oceans, and our problem, and presumably at that stage, if we colonize Mars, Mars will also be uninhabitable. So we must become an interstellar species. Exploration of Mars is again the first step in this goal. If we become capable of interstellar travel, we can survive indefinitely. There are also other more immediate benefits to Mars exploration. Obviously, investing money into Mars-based research creates jobs, boosting the economy and improving standards of living. Possibly more importantly, any research or development of new technologies from Mars exploration may well have wider applications.
I made the point there and I'm going to make the point again. Exploring other planets will give us the exact same benefits that you're mentioning, the exact same ones. Why Mars? Why does it have to be Mars?
It's the next step. It's hard enough going to Mars. It would be nigh impossible going to Venus at this stage. And you can't jump from going from Earth to Venus. It's far too big a jump. You've got to. There's no way that people say there's just these risks and they're putting money into it. You're not going to pour money into traveling to Venus if you haven't got to Mars first. You have to go to Mars first, in my opinion. I'd just like to finish then by saying that many consider mankind's greatest achievement is the moon landing. Landing a human on Mars will be the next step in our journey. It's a step we have to take to ensure the very survival of our species. It's also been shown that there was liquid water on the surface of Mars at one stage in its history, which may have allowed the development of life on Mars. And if we were to find life on Mars, I believe it's become humankind's greatest achievement.
Propose one more round of applause for that amazing speech. And it's a pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Inma Ferrati-Huertas.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to start with a rebuttal, and then I'm going to explain the points of pride that we had in this debate, and last but not least, I'm going to do a conclusion about this debate. So first of all, what the opposition should have answered is why we have to center the exploration of space in Mars. Because it causes more benefits or not. Okay, so what we're saying is we should focus this and in another parts of the space. And I'm going to explain in order of the speakers. Okay, first of all, the first speaker said we must go to Mars and soon. And then he explains three things: climatic disasters, famine, and many things out of control. Well, we have to live there. That's the only conclusion that I think about. Because if we're talking about famines, it's impossible to create another new colony in Mars because of the technology that we have already. The climatic disorders, the Mars expedition doesn't have to change the climatic disorders that we have. No, wait a second. And then the scientific development. Great. Okay, we agree with that, but not with Mars. So yeah, the point.
I'm making a different point actually. Just on the scientific point, I think the question why Mars keeps coming up again and again and again. And we're not saying that we shouldn't explore other parts of the solar system as well. And I don't want to be too I don't know, like childish about this, but like why not Mars? Okay, I'll say one last thing. It seems. Okay.
Yeah, we'll explain it.
Okay, we'll get into it.
I'll get into it. So like, okay, why not Mars? Okay, I'm going to explain why not Mars, but you didn't explain why Mars. Okay, the first thing about why not Mars is because, well, I'm going to make an analogy right here, okay? As the second speaker told us, since the Cold War, they would start to be more and more interested in Mars. Why? Okay, analogy. Cold War, we go to the moon. This supposed nuclear war we're going to have, now we're absolutely interested about Mars. Maybe it's not Mars exploration, it's Mars exploitation. So like, thank you, so, these problems are supposed to have no solution. The only solution that we can figure out is just, okay, we messed up our world, then why don't we go elsewhere so we don't have to fix our problems and just leave? Okay, and we don't agree with that. That's why I think Mars exploration is not sufficiently good enough for now. So what we're trying to say, what we said in this debate is that we're not against space exploration. And I think our goal is the same, knowledge. Of course, but the aim is not the same. Because of pop culture and because after the Cold War, we started to look at Mars. I mean, yeah, David Bowie was always asking, is there life on Mars? And now we know there isn't, so I mean, let's focus. Second, what's happening at our home? What's happening at our home? Yeah, as you, the opposition say, family kind of disorders, nuclear wars, probably, we hope not, but still, you'll never know. So, now, at least, we have to leave Mars alone. I think it's all about our current situation that we're looking to Mars, but we should look elsewhere, because there's a lot of problems that we can solve thanks to the space. That's why we think that $10 billion for Mars that are supposed to go there every year should go elsewhere instead of Mars. So, for the opposition, they are constantly talking about leaving the Earth for some scientific development, because we have, as I asked the second speaker in her speech, those basic needs we are reproduce and live. Well, again, not Mars exploration, it's Mars exploitation for us. So, our aim is the knowledge for a better Earth. That's what we should say. That's what we're trying to say in all of our speaks. We want to end first all the problems that we have with the world, and if we have to use its space for it, then go for it. But not Mars, because Mars is just another moon that we want to conquer. So, and points of information, yeah.
So, if it's a lifeless world, then why is exploitation of it a bad thing? Certainly to appropriate something that's owned by nobody is not entirely
I think
negative.
you don't think that in your heart, like. Okay, thank you for repeating the question, and I will answer you.
So, you said Mars is owned by nobody, but you make a big point about us exploiting it. Well, why is exploiting something that's owned by nobody inherently negative?
It's on the what?
Why is exploiting
Yeah.
something that's owned by nobody
Yeah.
inherently negative? Why is it bad?
I mean, why do you say that it's not proper somewhere? Like, I mean, it's like the moon. Okay, I'm going to do the same analogy so you can understand that better. When we were talking about when we were in the Cold War, we were just looking for the moon and wanted to conquer the moon, because with the United States and Russia. Okay, let's talk about Russia. Sorry. And Russia, we're trying to just see who has more power. And right now, with the nuclear war that we are supposed to have, or all the issues, all the conflicts that we already have in our planet, we're just looking for a solution that just can make ourselves better with our own problems, instead of just putting a solution for them. Okay, so again, I'm going to do a summary about all of these things that I speak about. And yes, again, I mean, we have the same goal, and it's knowledge, of course. but I think we don't have the same aim, and for us it's knowledge for a better Earth with space, and I think for the opposition it's just not Mars exploration, just Mars exploitation, which actually we don't want, and that's why we will stop funding for Mars exploration and instead using that money for things that really matter right now.
Thank you very much for that speech. Now I am pleased to introduce the final speaker, and he's a maiden speaker, Mr. James Gillan.
Probably should have this open before I come up, but alright, so members of the proposition, my fellow opposition, chairperson and members of the floor, good evening. So the main reason for going on space exploration in general is the hunt for alien life. So the question is, as Logan mentioned previously about the Fermi paradox, there should be loads of intelligent life and microscopic life in general in the universe. As he mentioned, intelligent life is quite difficult to discover, so our search should focus on microscopic life for the meantime. So if you're hunting for microscopic signs of life in space, the ideal place to look are exoplanets, which are planets outside of the solar system that have been discovered. And as mentioned by the proposition about funding that Operation Starshot, that would be the best way to go and search for life on exoplanets. But the technology required to do that is at least 100 years away. The way they accelerate those microscopic satellites to those exoplanets is using a really high-powered laser on the surface of the Earth to bounce off a reflector on the wee microscopic satellite thing to accelerate it to 20% of the speed. And that's actually, sorry, not yet, but that's not feasible with the lasers at the minute. Yes, go ahead.
As I recall, is Starshot not meant to be a thing that might be feasible by like 2050?
No. They're in the stage of research, but they don't plan on doing anything within the next 50 years. They plan on doing research and investigating the possibility of doing it, but the amount of, like you talked about 5 billion, that's a really unrealistic target for attaining that goal. It's going to cost far more than that, and to do that by 2050, the next 30 years is just ludicrous. I don't know. But yeah, so we can look at exoplanets, and we are looking at exoplanets at the minute using space-based and Earth-based telescopes. And what we can do is we can observe the atmospheres and detect life compounds in them, which just like compounds associated with life, such as water, carbon dioxide, oxygen, methane, things like that. But this is great, like we've detected maybe possible signs of things that would allow life on exoplanets, but they're so far away, it's so difficult to get them. Even if that is done by in 50 years, 60 or 70 years, it's still going to be out of some of our lifetimes. So why not try and start somewhere easier and then get to the harder stuff? So at the minute we're focused on a search for life in the solar system, and as you mentioned, you aren't specifically against space exploration in general, it's just Mars exploration, is that right? So like the next thing is, yes, we should be exploring other places in the solar system, but Venus and Mercury are far too hot to explore. We can't actually build anything that can go and land on the surface of Venus and won't be destroyed by the immense heat and immense pressure. Yes, go ahead.
Why Mars?
I'm getting off.
Okay.
Right here, Mars is here. Take your belly on.
No, I'm drinking this far.
Alright. So that's those two ruled out. The next ones are the 4 gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. Well, they have no solid surface, so there's no possible place for the life to be living on it. But as mentioned, they do have interesting moons. Jupiter's moon Europa was mentioned, thick ice crust and a salty liquid ocean underneath. That is a great place for life to be. And again, another moon on Saturn, its most massive moon, Titan, has a very thick atmosphere, and it could allow the development of life on it as well. But the problem are, like, the scales involved with these things are incredible. It took, I'm not sure of the exact number, but it takes years and years and years to send even a satellite to these outer planets to do the observations. Can you imagine sending a probe or satellite deep around? Yes,
Then why don't you use the funding for Mars exploration for that aim in particular, instead of just keep continuing to Mars and Mars and Mars exploration?
Well, why try to run before you can walk? If we can't make it to Mars, how do we want to make it to Saturn? How do we want to make it 10 times farther? How do we want to make it to another star, another galaxy, another solar system? Like, like we haven't actually got to the stage. We can't actually physically send people to Mars yet. The technology isn't available. We're slightly below the technology needed to go to Mars and to colonize Mars, but we're not at that stage yet. So why try and develop technology to send people 10 astronomical units away, and it's going to take them years of space travel when we can send them to Mars and we can get there in a couple of weeks? Like, surely that's a more attainable target in the meantime.
You can't respond.
Yeah, it is like, well, okay, so like these moons are too far away to get to. So the next, like, clearly distance is the issue. We can't get to other stars, we can't get to other solar systems, we can't get to other outer planets. The closest thing we should look at is the moon. But before we get to the moon has no atmosphere, doesn't support life. The next closest thing, I'm not too sure the distances. Venus and Mars are very, very close. I'm not sure which one is closer. I think that's what you were going to complain about earlier. I think Venus is closer. But Venus is an extremely hostile environment and you can't actually live on the surface of it. You could build a city floating in it, but that's a lot more difficult than putting a dome on the surface of Mars. You have to admit.
You just said that we wouldn't go to Venus because it has no atmosphere and it's uninhabitable, but Mars.
No, Venus has an extremely thick and hostile atmosphere. The surface temperature of Venus is over 900 degrees.
But certainly Mars is also as hostile.
No, back and forth.
Oh.
Alright, so if we can't go there and the probes can't, like if we send a probe to Venus, it'll be destroyed, like the heat is standard, like. Mars. Like we should go to Mars. We're starting off sending satellites. Satellites observed the surface. They looked at it, and the stuff was very promising at the start. They discovered evidence for old lakes and rivers, and they found traces of water on the surface of Mars. This is all great, but the problem with satellites are that they can't do surface analysis. They can't analyze the properties of the soil. They can't do subsurface analyses of different things. So the next thing to do is what they did do was they sent probes and rovers to the surface of Mars to do explorations. So they were able to do automated tasks designated by the
We've got
them. Oh, right, okay. They were able to do the automated tasks designated by people on Earth, but again, like a robot's never going to be able to do, well, these robots anyway aren't able to do as much as people can do. For example, the Opportunity rover was sent to Mars in 2004, and in its first 8 years on the surface, it only managed to travel 20 miles. And this, like, at the time, this was the best rover that they could build to send to Mars. It was the most amazing thing that ever made in NASA, like, and it's only covered 20 miles. I come home 20 miles, go home on Friday evening, like. On the surface of Mars, they had a buggy or a rover or something. They would hover out 20 miles every day. So clearly there's evidence that Mars, at the minute, it's very unlikely that we'll discover life living on Mars, but it's very likely that there was at one stage microscopic life living on Mars because of the evidence of water and different things. So clearly, if we are to hunt for alien life, the best place to start would be Mars, to find these traces of life that used to exist. And if we want to do that, the rovers aren't cut out to do it, the satellites aren't cut out to do it, and we need to send people to do a large-scale exploration of the surface.
I'd like to thank the speaker for that informative and entertaining talk. I think it's an amazing speech, so I propose a further round of
Well done indeed to all of our speakers. Otherwise, we once again ran on slightly longer than we should have. So hopefully we'll have time to get through 2 rounds of questions. So does anybody have any questions for the proposition? Ooh, I shall go with Mr. Rocket. Finn, what are you doing? I said no, I didn't say Roger. Sorry, Raja.
Okay, as far as the cost for Mars exploration is concerned, it cost $105 million to make the film Gravity. It cost $73 million to send the Indian Space Research Organization's mission to Mars. Now, why is it not possible to come up with cheaper alternatives for the Mars exploration itself? And I understand that $73 million is indeed a great deal of money, but these taxpayers who did pay this money also paid $792.6 million just to watch the film E.T.
Mr. Sullivan, to respond?
We're not saying that space exploration in general shouldn't be more fun.
No, I'm talking about Mars exploration.
I know. It's just that Mars is less cost efficient, you know, for the amount of money you put in, for the amount of benefit you get back. than a hell of a lot of other things. You could put as much money as you spend on Mars into, say, I don't know, exploring the oceans, and you get much more benefit out of that.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Would anybody from the opposition care to respond? You don't have to, but the option's there. No?
Yeah, you are talking about another things we can do to pay back, but actually what's the examples? And you see, we still paid a lot of money on social issues, like poverty, but things still existing. So, yeah, that's it. Give me an example that which things you are seeing is much devoted to propositions to put in funding. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Are there...
I'm not allowed to respond.
If you respond in 3 words,
I can't.
I appreciate that. Any questions for the opposition? No questions at all for the opposition. Mr. Donovan.
I don't remember Willingham. Okay.
Something very well.
So, a lot of the conjecture tonight has centred around the discovery of alien life. So I would ask the opposition and the House in general tonight if we want to meet alien life at all. Because it seems to me that we can hardly get on whenever there's one intelligent species in the universe and we really want to add any others into the mix. And further to that, to ask the question that if we think answering this essentially philosophical question in the long term is much more important than in the short term protecting the interests of people with our public funding and what we do with our own planet in the short term.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. Who from the opposition would like to respond? Mr. Hope?
Yeah. I guess I would say that discovering life on Mars. I would make maybe 2 points. It is in a big way a philosophical undertaking, and it means a lot to us, sort of like philosophically and conceptually, and it changes the meaning of being human and all that. But it also has there's utility to it as well. It has a scientific purpose. It could tell us how life developed here, what relation, if that life, for example, that we find on Mars is clearly totally different, has no burden, no relation, that has a big scientific impact because it tells us that life can arise in different places. Whereas if it's similar to us, then it shows evidence for panspermia, the idea that actually life can develop in one place in the solar system and go. So the point that I'm making is that it's not purely philosophical. There's good, solid scientific ground why we want to answer this question.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Would anybody from the proposition care to respond? Yeah, you don't have to put the...
So, I kind of agree with you in some sense. But kind of piggybacking off the fourth opposition mentioned in the speech and kind of assume that we were saying is that to explore you need to have human boots on the ground. That poses a lot of questions and say if we send boots to Mars or boots to Enceladus or anywhere and we find extraterrestrial life, can we ever, and it somehow it seems similar to life on Earth, can we ever truly say that that life was extraterrestrial? Because as humans, we've landed on the surface, so we contaminated that surface. What we're saying as proposition is that you don't need to have human feet on the surface. We can develop robots that can do just as good a job as humans do, and we can ensure that they're a lot more sanitized than us started.
Are there any outstanding points on the motion? Yes, Mr. McCann.
Yeah, the proposition avoided some awkward questions by supporting space exploration in general. So I just wanted to ask, given our species' sick record of existence on this planet, actually mutilated it, how can anyone dream of saying that regardless of what's driving us, whether it's exploration, colonization, guaranteed destruction of some kind, how can anyone possibly argue we should be there anywhere near anything else, you know? That was like giving a baby to a babysitter, having it mutilated, and then... I think I got the point here.
Said sick, I thought you were like skateboarding, like sick. You heard about it. So I will ask the proposition to respond first. Who would like to respond? Mr. Sullivan? Mr. Sullivan.
like to think that by the time we have technology to go out into the universe and claim it all for ourselves, that we'll be slightly better on that front and we won't mutilate planets or indeed babies.
That's all we can really hope for. Would anybody from the opposition like to respond? You know, again, well, no, you can't really have to respond to this one. Anyone else?
Yeah, so no, I would just say that I love the analogy, but like currently it doesn't look like there is life on Mars. There could be, but there's certainly nothing big enough to probably go on the way that you would with a baby. It seems to be that so somebody once described Mars as existing in mineral unconsciousness. There's nobody there right now to see it. There's nobody there to touch it, to interact with it. It's for all intents and purposes, could likely be, maybe it's not, but very could likely be a big lump of rock. And if it is a big lump of rock, well then I want it. So.
Very good, Tony. Are there any questions for the proposition? Oh, blast! I shall have to go with you.
Hello.
Could you state a name for the minutes?
Oh, my name's Holly now. So I think it was you, the third speaker, that said, why should we worry about Mars when in 500 years we'll have warp speed to get us to other planets? How do you expect that technology to develop? Like, are you just going to run really fast in your garden? Short-term, slightly possible, slightly feasible goal to aim for in order to reach the bigger goals that you all speak of. That, to me, is why Mars is the answer. How exactly do you expect that technology to develop if you will not put any money or time into allowing it to grow?
Thank you very much. I believe that was correct. Someone to respond.
It's not that I think that we're alright then. It's not that I think that we're just going to suddenly, in 500 years, click a button and research the next thing. I recognise we have to actually make progress towards that by doing things and exploring other things, or associating taking small steps. It's just, I don't think that Mars is a particularly useful step. Instead, we should be focusing more on getting this technology by travelling to, say, Venus, or Ganymede, or Io, or indeed Proxima Centauri b. Mars just isn't really worth the cost in my eyes, and there are similarly small steps we can take, and those steps lead to much more interesting places.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Would anybody from the opposition care to respond? You don't have to.
You say it takes a similar step.
Sorry. You say
it takes a similar step to get to Venus or to get to these far out rooms, but nobody seems to comprehend these astronomical scales that are involved. Like the nearest star is over a light year away. The distance that the time it would take to travel there, if you sent people on it, it would be long dead by the time they got there, even if they did die from natural causes. And even the moons in the solar system, they're many astronomical units away. It takes years to get to. It's very, very difficult to get that far away. So realistically, they have to go locally, and it'll be Mars or Venus. But I covered this already. The surface on Venus is absolutely inhospitable. It's now impossible to live on or to live on it. I think the Soviets sent a probe to the surface of Venus actually in the 80s, and it was on the surface of the planet for about 3 minutes, and the camera bracket melted at 900 degrees. It was made out of something to stop it from melting, and it just was destroyed. So the whole mission for millions of dollars was just ruined because of that. So why go somewhere that's so inhospitable when Mars is a similar distance away, and it's not hospitable, it's not livable, but it's a lot easier to live on than it is Venus. Would you rather live in nothing or live in a bowl of acid?
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the opposition now? The opposition. Yes. Good person.
So I know it's an already.
Sorry, can I get a name for the minutes?
Oh, Leo. So it's been mentioned already, but I think we're on an island just surrounded by water, and I think we're aquaculture and water tourism and stuff is deeply important to us as a society. So I think, especially with the fact that 90%, I think you said 90% of the oceans haven't been explored, shouldn't we be focusing more on trying to understand the oceans and the water stuff better.
Thank you, good sir. I agree, but it comes. I think a lot of this debate boils back down to the idea of walking and chewing bubblegum at the same time. The ability that there's enough people on Earth to do more than one thing. The point that I make is that I'm fascinated by the deep, by the abyss as well, and I think that it would be great to see us explore more. But that, like, the oceanographers who are exploring the abyss aren't the same as the engineers who are creating Mars rovers. Like, there's not that fluidity and flexibility where we can just like point our science ray at different things. Like, these are industries, with different people and stuff. So I think it's not compared.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Would anybody from the proposition care to respond? For the sake of time, you can always speak. Oh, okay. This works.
Actually, I kind of agree with him. So, like, I think this house actually believes that the ocean needs to be explored, but when we're talking and when we're centering about the motion, that's the point of where we do not agree. It's just like, there's some other things that we should invest in money for Mars exploration instead of only Mars exploration. So, like, if we're talking about space, let's put that money in other, let's say, researchers. Yeah, is that word? Yeah. Researchers. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're trying to just develop better things for our planet. I don't know which where I read it, but it was something about the cancer that they were investigating in the space. We're just trying to end with cancer. I don't have the research here, so like tell me about that later. But I mean, yeah, that's it. We can. I kind of agree with you, but not in the main focus. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And a question now of spin and motion. Mr. Doherty, you look really eager, so I'll give it to you.
I'd like to ask both sides of the debate, what is the point in funding space exploration as opposed to sorting out healthcare, education, gender equality and welfare for those that need it most from the cradle to the grave?
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. I feel like that was leaning more in one direction than another, but nevertheless, I'll ask the opposition to respond first this time. Decide amongst yourselves. Who would like to take this? Let's try now. Please.
No, that's fair enough. I think that the 2 points that I made, one is just that when it comes to a lot of those problems, the answer to them can't be conceptualized just as being a problem of money, or things not having enough money. I think that when it comes to things like poverty and the human issues that are facing us right now, a lot of it is structural rather than a question of people not having enough money. It's a question of things like distribution or infrastructure. It's not, again, like, it's not compared like. The second reason, and this is just me really using this opportunity to shoehorn my whole thesis in, but I think that there actually is an urgent reason to do it, and it's that if we don't do this, as I mentioned in my speech, private industry is going to try and do it. Now, I'm dubious as to whether they're successful or not, but we've all seen the headlines with SpaceX and Elon Musk. It looks like this could be possible, that private enterprise could arrive on Mars. And the ethical implications of that, and buy me a drink and ask me about it, I'll tell you all about it, would be disastrous. The people who live in a private Martian colony would not be very fortunate in my eyes, and therefore I think it's extremely important that, because if we don't publicly fund it, it's going to happen anywhere in the private sphere, that we publicly fund it. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. And finally, Mr. Planning.
So you're asking why do space exploration at all, essentially, right? The analogy I can think of off the top of my head now is astronauts up in the ISS spend generally around 6 months up there at a time. One of the symptoms that they've noticed while they're up there is astronauts who come back on Earth, their eyesight is a whole lot worse. So as they're up in microgravity, the shape of the eye, it becomes a perfect sphere, whereas it's not a perfect sphere down here. By moving our bodies out and looking at them in a different environment and seeing them, how they operate and how they change in a different environment, allows us to learn a lot more about how they function in the first place. So although it can't seem like why would putting someone up in space benefit healthcare, we're learning a whole lot more about how the eye functions. It's the same for muscle degradation, for bone degradation. In healthcare specifically, we're learning a whole lot more about how the human body works in the first place, and that's how we can apply it to our healthcare and make people healthier.
I really do apologise. Mr Secretary, could you please make a note somewhere that we need to discuss the next council meeting and if we can find time for more questions? Because I can feel the House dying to ask more, and yet, once again, we're attacked. Am I right to presume that there is no appetite for another round of questions? Because that would leave us here quite late. Quick show of hands, all those who want another round of questions, raise your hand. All those who want to head on to the pub sooner rather than later. That's pretty definitive. Okay, well, I'd like to thank all our speakers, and just to get moving on, I would like to welcome back to the head of the table here to give us some closing remarks our guest chair for this evening.
Well, thank you once again. In the interest of the pub that's just down the road, I'll try to I think we heard convincing arguments on both sides of the House today, and I thank our speakers again for that. I wrote down several comments I'd like to make. My handwriting isn't very good, so I'm not going to read one or two of these. The first thing I want to say in response to what I've heard is I don't think anybody mentioned democracy. I mean, the fact that governments are voted in for 3 or 5 year periods, and fiscal budgets in America, for example, have to be decided every 5 years or so. NASA, for example, that has about 8,000 employees, totally paid for by taxpayers' money, is absolutely susceptible to what those politicians think. I was at the meeting at NASA headquarters a year or so ago in Washington, a meeting of the Mars Exploration Scientific Analysis Group, and it was open to the public and open to the press. And I remember the chair at that meeting saying, the next Mars mission plans to bring back samples for the first time to Earth. And if it was up to scientists, the Mars mission after that would bring back more samples, because there's so much to discover, there's so much to analyse. But for political reasons, to keep politicians on board and excited and see the point of giving such a huge amount of the American fiscal budget for space research, they have to promise that they'll bring samples back right now, and then immediately after that send a person to Mars. And this is simply to keep politicians entertained and see the relevance of giving money for something that's not happened yet. And so the concept of asking politicians to save away money or to develop technology, and in 50 years' time we'll bring some kind of dividend and we'll get to some exoplanet or somewhere else, isn't really going to work, because politicians want to pay for something and within the lifespan of their government get the product of that. And so politics holds in the palm of its hand NASA, which at the moment is the most powerful space agency in the world. But I can tell you, I'm a very close friend of Mary Wojtek, for example, a senior scientist for astrobiology at NASA. She's in charge of a $70 million research budget for astrobiology, so she's a powerful woman in that field. And I can tell you, if she could be on Enceladus tomorrow, or Europa, or one of these places, she'd be there. I don't believe Mary Wojtek, and to some extent I'm speaking for the astrobiology community. Imagine there's a much more great likelihood of life on Mars than there is in some of these other places. And if people could easily go to those, I imagine they'd be there tomorrow. But in the real world, in relation to technology, what we can do today, what we can do tomorrow, what politicians will fund us to do, we're not free to just click our fingers and be wherever we'd like to be right now. So I think it was a very convincing argument that somebody talked about, I can't remember the words, the politics of a nation wanting to be on Mars, to take the next step, and what that gives to a sense of cultural identity and a sense of belonging, sense of national pride, a feeling of potency in having achieved something, the next step that we can achieve, I think is very important. The other side of the coin that one speaker mentioned, you can see that as colonialism. And I did nearly say in my introductory speech, this issue of cultural identity and politics and national pride, I nearly presented that in terms of a case for and a case against the argument. I didn't want to bore you with my opening speech, but during your talks, I really thought that was a key issue that came out here. I agree, I'm a microbiologist, and I tend to look at Earth's biosphere. There are huge issues, as I'm sure everybody knows at the moment, with climate change, the need for bioenergy, global food security, how do we feed the global population, issues that somebody raised here to do with bioprospecting, exploring the oceans, finding useful pharmaceuticals and things like that. There are huge issues on Earth, and huge issues that need all our intellect, all our technology, and huge amount of funding. And the argument of how do we weigh going to Mars with these kind of things brings us back to the initial issue of the valuable painting that somebody bought recently. What's art worth? What's national pride worth? What's Mars exploration worth? Do we just want something concrete? Do we pump all the money into how to produce bioethanol, biogas, or whatever it may be? Those are irreconcilable issues to some degree. There was talk of agriculture. Agriculture on Mars may not necessarily need to look like agriculture here. There are many people, Lynn Rothschild, for example, in the world looking at microorganisms, engineering microorganisms, carrying out synthetic biology to produce cells that can photosynthesize in culture using solar radiation and produce sugars and various nutrients. It may be that agriculture on Mars wouldn't necessarily be based on soil at all. Somebody talked about how hostile Mars is. I'm not an expert on that, but I do know the regolith of Mars and the atmosphere that there is there is full of perchlorate, a particular salt, a particular kind of iron, which is particularly nasty for microorganisms, something I work on, but particularly unpleasant for human beings to breathe in. I mean, would kill us quite soon. So it really is quite a hostile place. One thing I wanted to mention is people talked about the cost of space research. Probably about half the cost of space research, if you want to send a rover to Mars or get samples from Mars or whatever it may be, is because of planetary protection measures. There's a huge political infrastructure in planetary protection. If we send a spacecraft to Mars, we don't want to contaminate the environment with microorganisms, for example. If we bring a sample back from Mars, it has to be brought back in such a secure unit, and it has to be brought back to a purpose-built building, which is more secure than a bioterrorism research unit, so that if there was any little grey molecule that could proliferate and take over Earth, it's not going to escape from there. So all space exploration missions are carried out in the context of planetary protection, and probably about half the budget, as far as I understand, for any space exploration mission is because of the cost of engineering things and doing things to ensure no cross-contamination. I found particularly interesting the comment about us becoming an interstellar species. Do we believe that we're going to live forever and we should proliferate, go beyond Earth if we mess it up, and simply carry on and carry on across the solar system or wherever we can go? Having lived in Japan some time ago, I appreciate the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi. The Japanese have a very deep cultural understanding of the impermanence of life, and in Japanese art and culture, that is a very deep thing. In the Western world, we tend to have the opposite kind of sense that we ought to live forever as individuals and maybe as species. So I thought that was a very interesting comment that confronts us here. Finally, I'd like to say, not just in terms of exploring other moons rather than Mars, there's a huge buzz and a huge excitement about exoplanets. Like was mentioned here, they're very difficult to get to. We have limited technical ability to get there or do things. But I think the great and the good of the astrobiology world understand that's where a lot of action might be in terms of life. But coming back to Mars, I think it's also understood that on early Mars there were conditions very similar to those on Earth. As far as I understand, there was absolutely plenty of water. As far as I personally understand, I wouldn't call myself a leading astropologist, although I do get invited to many things. But I rub shoulders with many leading astrobiologists. And as far as I understand, the opinion is life is as plausible on early Mars and as it was on early Earth in terms of the conditions and the possibility. And therefore the possibility at least of biosignatures of life on Mars, which are preserved there. But there's even a possibility, especially in the subsurface, of extinct life. And that is still scientifically interesting to look into in many ways. So I think I'd like to conclude there.
We very much appreciate you being here, and I think I speak for the House when I say you'll always be the leading astrobiologist in our hearts. Can I get another round of applause for our guest? Thank you very much, thank you everyone for sitting here so late into the evening. If you'd like to find your membership cards now, I just want to remind you that we're adjourning to woodworkers. Mr. O'Neill gives away in the red shirt there. I want. No, maybe some other week, but this week woodworkers. The man in the red shirt will be leading the first expedition. Some of us will be staying behind to put the furniture back in the this. So if you can't get away, do stick around and we'll take it there. I mentioned the Godkin several times. I realise that to new people, that's just a random word that doesn't make any sense. So next week, you'll find out what on earth a Godkin is. And finally, if anybody has an Apple Lightning cable, my iPod's dead, I'm really out to charge it. Excellent, speak to me afterwards. So, yes, I now move the House to a vote, I believe. So, the motion this evening was this: House regrets. No, it wasn't. That's next week. This week it was indeed. This week it was this House would stop funding for Mars exploration. This is a vote on speaker ability. It is not which side you were personally convinced by. It's which side you think spoke the best. So, if you believe the speakers on the proposition this side of the House spoke best this evening, please raise your hand on your membership card and say aye. Aye. Keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I assume you two are members. 7. We'll go 7. If you believe that the opposition spoke better this evening, please raise your hand and say nay. Nay. Keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15. We can see if you don't have a card in your hand, we're not counting you. And finally, if you believe that both sides spoke equally well, equally terribly, or you wish to express no opinion on the matter whatsoever, or you just wish not to vote even, please raise your hand, say it loud, say it proud, say meh! Meh! Keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Guest Chair, could you please read back the vote to me?
So for the proposition, it's 7 votes. For the opposition, 15 votes. And the abstainers, 9 votes.
Therefore, the opposition has it! The opposition has it!